Mayor de Blasio is giving an update on the coronavirus pandemic in New York City. Let's take that.
I made a vow that we would get the Marriage Bureau up and running again. We worked with the city clerk's office, and we are bringing back the Marriage Bureau for New York City, opening again as early as Monday. This coming Monday, you and your loved one can book an appointment to get married. And on Friday, the first marriage licenses will be given out. So, weddings are back. Wedding bureau's back. We're coming back. And love is in the air. And what perfect timing, just in time for Saturday, which is the 10th anniversary of marriage equality. And we are so happy that these events are all coming together to remind us how beautiful love and marriage are. I'm someone now, let's see, 1994, that's 27 years ago. 27 years of marriage in my case, and it's the most beautiful institution there is, and it's back. So we have a lot to celebrate in the summer in New York City. Having weddings back, having the Marriage Bureau back is one of them. And look, a lot of folks were waiting for this moment. A lot of folks have been waiting to get married. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who said, we were planning on getting married, we can't wait to get married. Now it's time. New York City's coming back and weddings are coming back. Thanks, special thanks to City Clerk Michael McSweeney and to Speaker Corey Johnson's office. Everyone got together and said, we just got to get this done. And so starting next week, we're back. I want you to hear about this from someone who really appreciates the power of marriage and marriage equality, and he fought for it for years. And I know he's really happy about this good news as well. Councilmember Danny Drum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And before I get started, I want to thank you for your leadership. You have really pulled us through this pandemic, and I couldn't be more proud than to say thank you for all that you've done for us. Your leadership has been tremendous. I also want to mention that we just passed the budget, and because of our work collaboratively, we were able to save and provide help with the social safety net, provide for additional food for neighborhoods like mine who have been tremendously impacted by the COVID pandemic, additional healthcare services, and one of my favorite things, which is putting in millions of dollars for the LGBT curriculum in the New York City Department of Education. And you mentioned that this is the 10th anniversary for marriage equality. It was a very hard-fought fight. I remember marching over the Brooklyn Bridge and going to many protests and demonstrations, and its failure to pass in the state legislature in 2009, and then finally in 2011, just as we were signing or doing the handshake at City Hall, we got word that the legislation had passed in the New York State Assembly. So it is a great anniversary to celebrate as well. I also want to thank Mike McSweeney. He told me long time ago that he would be supportive once the law passed and he would perform that marriage, and he did. And that was on July 24th, 2011. But you know, some of the most moving stories that I hear, and congratulations on your 27 years, but I do hear from people who were not able to get married, who were together for 25, 35, 40 years, and believe it or not, they still want to get married. And now they can, and that's because we passed this in New York State, and now they can do it in New York City. I want to remind everybody there's no residency requirement, no residency restrictions, so people can come to New York, they can book their hotel room, have a honeymoon, and get married in New York City finally once again. And Mr. Mayor, I just want to admit that unfortunately I'm not married. But even at my age, hope springs eternal. So thank you for doing this, and it's great to see you again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. And Danny, yes, hope does spring eternal, brother. Don't give up. Don't give up. Love is in the air. And you're right. People, look, New Yorkers who've been waiting a long time to get married, this is a beautiful moment. But we welcome everyone here. You're absolutely right. And it's the summer of New York City. A lot of people are coming here to experience the amazing things that are going to happen this summer. Why not get married here while you're at it? Make it even better. Thank you so much, Councilmember Danny Drum. All right, now, How come the Marriage Bureau is opening up? Because people got vaccinated, because we did the biggest vaccination effort in the history of New York City. Yesterday, you heard the extraordinary study from Yale University confirming the positive impact of this vaccination effort, the absolutely life-saving impact. All credit goes to the vaccinators, to the healthcare heroes, the folks who made it happen, Test and Trace Corps, everyone who was out there making it happen. Because of your efforts and because New Yorkers showed up, now weddings back and so many other wonderful things back. As of today, in the city of New York, 9,672,028 vaccinations have been given. We're closing in on 10 million doses. Absolutely amazing. Every single day, thousands and thousands of more people step forward, and we're going to turn things around with the power of vaccination. This is the X factor. It's working, and we're going to keep bringing it to the people of this city. Now, let's talk about recovery. Recovery for all of us. Recovery for all of us means the city's working for everyone. Recovery for all of us means a focus on the things that we've been doing. Vaccination, of course, number one, get everyone healthy, get rid of COVID, bring back jobs, bring back economic activity, bring back tourists, bring back our schools. We have summer rising right now for our kids. Bring back our schools in September, full strength. All of these pieces are part of our recovery. But increasingly, we see a missing link, and that's our subways. There are a lot of problems right now, and we cannot have a full recovery without the MTA getting stronger. The MTA needs to get it together because right now we're seeing too many problems. And the answer, I think, one of the big answers to these problems is congestion pricing. I want to talk about that today. But let's just review what we've seen in recent weeks. Right when the recovery is coming on with a lot of momentum and people are ready to come back to the subways, the heartbeat of New York City, we've seen unprecedented problems in our subways. The flooding a few days ago, shocking, painful, troubling. We can't see that in the future, unacceptable. The trips that have been canceled, in the month of June alone, 10,800 subway trips canceled. What does that mean? It means strap hangers wait and wait and wait. It means they can't depend on the subway. If they can't depend on the subway, the city doesn't work. The subway's heartbeat of the city, heartbeat of the entire metropolitan area. We saw images a few days ago, New Yorkers waist deep in water, trying to get home to their families, trying to make sure they could pick up their kids. Shocking and unacceptable. It means we got to do things differently. Now look, congestion pricing has always been part of the solution. We got to an agreement, but it still hasn't happened, and it needs to. It needs to happen urgently. The city's coming back, the economy's coming back, kids are going back to school in September. You're going to see more and more people ready to come back to the subways, but they've got to know that the subways are going to be better. And the pandemic caused a different problem. Lots of people turning back to their cars. We've got to stop that because that's caused congestion on our streets, more pollution. It's bad for the climate. We've seen too many crashes. We've got to get people out of the cars. Again, the solution, get people back to mass transit, make mass transit better. That means congestion pricing. So years ago, there was agreement, city, state legislature, everyone agreed. It's now time to move this. It's overdue. I'm going to now offer a vision of how we get this on track and get it moving immediately. And I want to start by thanking the Biden administration. We know we had some real problems with the Trump administration trying to move forward on congestion pricing. I spoke to Pete Buttigieg as soon as he became transportation secretary. He was a mayor. He knows how important it is to get people to be able to move around. To his great credit, he acted quickly. He streamlined the process for the federal approvals. He made it easier for the state and the MTA to do what they need to do on congestion pricing. Look, the state runs the MTA. It's time for the state to get in gear, get congestion pricing done, because we have a federal partner. That's good news. Now we got to get the pieces to move. I'll go over them. First of all, the Traffic Mobility Review Board. Doesn't sound particularly sexy, but it's absolutely crucial to getting this going. This board has not yet met. The MTA is supposed to call the meeting. They haven't called the meeting. And this is an urgent need. I'm nominating my finance commissioner, Sharif Solomon, who's a tremendous public servant, who's worked on the issues related to the MTA for years, very, very knowledgeable about it, ready to serve, ready to go. I'm nominating him to the board, but I'm nominating him to a board that has never been called together and that the MTA has not done what they need to do to actually activate. So I'm urging the MTA today, ensure that everyone who needs to be named to that board is named and convene a meeting immediately. We can't get to congestion pricing unless this board meets, and it's literally not even constituted yet. So let's fix that. So 1, I'm naming the city representative, Sharif Solomon. 2, calling upon the MTA to immediately constitute this board, call the meeting, get it going. 3, the MTA has to expedite the environmental assessment. The Biden administration made it easy. Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Thank you, Deputy Secretary Polly Trottenberg, who was our transportation commissioner, did such an amazing job here. They did the right thing. But now the state and the MTA have to act and expedite that assessment so we can get going. 4th, set a public goal. Here's what I say. By June, all of the work should be done and shovels should go in the ground by July next year. By July, because when you think about, we have an expedited environmental assessment, we got a board that needs to meet and make decisions, but there are decisions that can be made, contractors in place. So get all the work done that needs to be done and then get shovels in the ground by July, a year from now, so that congestion pricing can happen in 2022. The actual physical work isn't that much to put up the monitors that tell which license plates are coming into the city. That's not that hard. These other pieces need to happen, but they can happen. But we haven't seen action from the MTA. The time for action is now. I want you to hear from someone who's been a very strong advocate for congestion pricing, who has been a true voice for working people and has fought to make sure that working people can actually get to work. And I want to remind everyone, if you can't get to work, nothing else works, especially if you're a working person or a low-income person. She represents neighborhoods in Queens that have been through so much in COVID, and she's fighting to make sure the MTA works for the people of her district and this whole city. She is also the chair of the Labor Committee in the State Senate. State Senator Jessica Ramos.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, and good morning to all of our beautiful city. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back to talk about another important issue that you're tackling this week. You know, during my last summer working for you, I actually got stuck on the 7 train coming from Jackson Heights on my way to City Hall. We were stuck under the East River for almost 2 hours. And there was a woman sitting next to me who started crying and panicking because for her, being late to work 2 hours meant that her pay was going to be docked 2 hours. And so I know many times we think about the concept that time is money, especially for the rich. But let me tell you, for working families in New York, time really is money, because not only can your pay be docked, but perhaps you end up paying extra fees in childcare, which are about $1 a minute that you're late to pick up your child. So these are very serious issues for New York's family. We don't have to tell New Yorkers, unfortunately, that the state of our public transportation is decrepit. But what we do need is for everyone to get on board to help us get the state to make serious investments in the MTA and stop using it like an ATM. Congestion pricing will help us check off many things on the to-do list. And perhaps even more importantly, it's going to affect the well-being of our planet. It will hopefully result in the nitrogen dioxide and other pollutants that come from gas-guzzling cars, and worse, those ginormous and unnecessary SUVs in New York City. You know, here in Astoria, in our district, we have the highest asthma rate in the entire city. It's why you and I, Mayor, are working together to stop the NRG peaker plant from being built. But also, we need less congestion at that gateway neighborhood around highways, around the Queensboro Bridge, around the Midtown Tunnel. We need everybody's cooperation in doing this. So I want to echo the mayor's call to speed up the implementation of congestion pricing. The need is urgent. And, you know, while we continue to hold up billions from being invested in our public transportation system, no one should be fined and certainly not tased over $275. And we should, in fact, be working towards a city that offers a high-class free transit system for our city. To close, I just want to add my voice in support of Sharif Soliman's appointment to the board. Having worked with Sharif at City Hall for some years, I saw his dedication to our city and our people firsthand, and I know he's going to be a solid voice for strap hangers on the Traffic Mobility Review Board. So thank you so much for talking about this today, Mayor, and I'm really hoping that we're heard and that congestion pricing is enacted as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Senator. And Senator, you have a strong voice. You are often heard in Albany and New York City, and I love it when you use that strong voice. I appreciate you, and we've got to get this done with urgency, and you are an urgent person, so I know you're going to help us make a big difference and get the state to act. Thank you. Now, I want to hear from a member of the Assembly, everyone, and I know him well. He was a great community advocate before he became an elected official, and I know because he's from my neighborhood and represents some of the very same neighborhoods I represented in the City Council. He is an activist member of the Assembly in the sense that he is always there looking for what needs to be done and pushing the spectrum. He is the chair of the Subcommittee on Museums and Cultural Institutions, so he knows that whether you're a New Yorker or a visitor, if you can't get around to these great places, it's not New York City and it won't work the same way, and we've got to make our subways work. My pleasure to introduce Assemblymember Robert Carroll.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for having me. It is wonderful to be here, and I commend you for appointing Sharif Soliman to the Traffic Mobility Review Board. This is such an important issue. Congestion pricing is going to not only raise necessary revenue to modernize the MTA, it's going to make our streets safer, our air cleaner, and our city more livable. We need to get started on this immediately. It was a travesty that the Trump administration blocked the implementation of congestion pricing. Now that the Biden administration has given the go-ahead, we need to take the reins and get this done as soon as possible, because everyday New Yorkers need a modern, efficient MTA to get around. Our city won't recover from COVID unless we have the best mass transit system in the world, and we can do that with congestion pricing helping fund the modernization efforts. I know Sharif to be a smart, thoughtful, conscientious individual. He's a great member of this board. The other folks who need to appoint members need to do that as soon as humanly possible, and we need to get this done. Thank you for your leadership, Mr. Mayor. Sharif, thank you so much for your work and dedication, and I know that you'll be a wonderful member of this review board and a really thoughtful actor for all New Yorkers.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember, and I can hear the urgency in your voice, and I appreciate it deeply. And we're going to work closely with you, and I agree. All the other entities that need to name members of this board should be doing it like today, because we need to get going. Thank you so much, Assemblymember. Now I want you to hear from a council member. He is such a well-known voice on these issues. He has been one of the great leaders of this city on transportation issues. He has been a voice for equity and fairness, for congestion pricing, both to fund the MTA, but also congestion pricing to stop the horrible pollution that has afflicted so many neighborhoods. In the vein of environmental racism, his voice rings very, very true on these issues. My pleasure to introduce the chair of the Transportation Committee in the City Council, Councilmember Ydanis Rodriguez. Well, we think he's there. There. Yes? Councilmember, can you hear us?
Why don't we just wait? Let me ask him right now. I'm sitting with him.
Councilmember Ydanis Rodriguez. All right, we're going to try and get him back? Okay, we'll try and get him back in just a moment. I'll tell him about all the nice things I said about him. Okay. Now, two advocates, two more people I want you to hear from. Extraordinary advocates who represent organizations that have led the way on these issues for a long time. And I know they felt a tremendous sense of satisfaction a few years ago when everyone agreed on congestion pricing, and they're feeling real urgency about the need to get it done. First, League of Conservation Voters obviously understands this is about so many elements of what we need to address, including the fact that if we don't get people out of their cars, if we don't turn to mass transit, we will not be able to save this earth. And the League has been a very powerful voice for change and has won many victories because of it. It's my very great pleasure to introduce the president of the New York League of Conservation Voters, Julie Tai.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for including us today, and thank you for all you're doing to help ensure that congestion pricing moves forward. Like many others, we're very excited and happy that Polly Trottenberg helped make sure that the Biden administration removed the impediments that we have. We certainly went to her first and foremost and said, we need to get this done. And we want to thank Senator Schumer and Congressman Jeffries and Congressman Espaillat for all the work they did, A, to help move the Biden administration to make sure we're moving forward with this as quickly as possible, but B, for all of the funding that they're providing to the MTA to help us move forward with congestion pricing and to make sure that the MTA has as many resources as possible as part of the infrastructure plan as well as part of the recovery plan. We've been advocating for congestion pricing for more than a decade, and we're very excited that it got implemented from the state legislature. We thank you, Senator Ramos, Senator Assemblymember Carroll, and all the others in Albany who helped get that done, and the governor for leading on that front. Now, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, is the time for us to actually move forward for this and get it done. Last year, we saw how much of improvement we could see in our air quality when we had all the traffic was down for obviously a very unfortunate reason, but there was a 25% decrease in air pollution, which showed that we can really make a big difference with our air quality, in particular in communities of color and disadvantaged communities that are overburdened with this air pollution. Based on what's happened in other places that have implemented congestion pricing, we expect that we will see a decrease of 2.1 billion greenhouse gas emissions per year, which is a lot and a big way to go to help reduce our emissions. We also know that in Stockholm, children's hospitalizations from asthma decreased by nearly 50% when they implemented congestion pricing. So this isn't just about fighting climate change. It's not just about air quality. It's also about public health, in particular for our children. And school absenteeism's #1 cause in New York City is asthma. So it's really time for us to make sure that we're investing in our mass transit because we cannot drive our way out of the climate crisis. So I too commend Sharif Solomon for his appointment. I know he'll be a great advocate. He's very, very smart, very considerate in making sure that this is going to move forward in a way that makes sense for New York City and for our entire region. And I want to thank you for moving this forward and work with you to help urge the governor and the MTA to make sure we get this done as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. And Julie, you get soundbite of the day already. We cannot drive our way out of the climate crisis. I really appreciate that. Powerfully said. And thank you for connecting all the dots there because, yeah, this helps us on so many levels. But we've really got to move with urgency, and your support and your organization's support is going to help us get there. So thank you so much. Now, another wonderful advocacy organization that's gotten so much done. The Riders Alliance has been the noble, powerful voice of subway riders, has been there for them through thick and thin, and has regularly been ahead of the curve. And a lot of times it is the Riders Alliance that has successfully lit a fire under various government agencies to get them to move. So it's very appropriate to have them with us because we need some fire lit right now to get everything moving on congestion pricing. My pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of the Riders Alliance, Betsy Plum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are grateful for you championing the urgency of this key program today. My name is Betsy Plum, Executive Director of the Riders Alliance. We are a grassroots organization of subway and bus riders holding our leaders accountable, as the mayor said, across the 5 boroughs, and we are a proud ally to the many organizations and leaders who moved arm in arm to win congestion pricing in 2019 and to win a stronger, better future for our city. We need this program, to quote the mayor, as soon as humanly possible, and we certainly agree by next summer. We cannot wait any longer. COVID only increased our need for congestion pricing. Manhattan is choked with traffic right now. Our recovery won't be built on gridlock and polluted air, as Julie said, but with transit that works and works for everyone. Speedy implementation of congestion pricing is how we get there. As the mayor mentioned, as we all saw in shocking videos of flooding subways last week, or as we wait for a train that's delayed 20, 30 minutes, sometimes unfortunately 2 hours, as Senator Ramos mentioned, it is key to remember that the critical billions of dollars to be raised by congestion pricing are a core part of the MTA's plan to fix the subway, to make it more accessible with new elevators, to modernize signals that on many lines date back to the 1930s, to make the system more reliable and resilient. We absolutely deserve that improved system, and we need to fight for it, which means we need congestion pricing. As New York reopens, as we recover and move towards a more equitable future, we need to see the program turned on, and we are calling on Governor Cuomo to move the environmental assessment and other key implementation measures forward as soon as possible to truly champion this key program. We are very grateful to City Hall and to the mayor for demanding that congestion pricing advance rapidly, to getting out there and making moves with the nomination of Sharif Solomon, and we look forward to continuing to champion the progress, equity, and economic opportunity housed in this vital program, and to, as the mayor said, continue holding our leaders accountable to what we all deserve and need. Thank you so much.
I know you will, Betsy. I know you will, and I thank you for it. And our strap hangers are better off because you guys are out there as such a strong voice. Thank you very, very much. Now, let's see, everyone, if our transportation chair in the City Council, I said really nice things about him, and I mean it because he has been such a fighter for equity in transportation and a believer in the power of congestion pricing. Let's see if he's with us now. Transportation Chair, Ydanis Rodriguez. Can you hear me?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's a big honor to be working with you. I have said before, I say now, and we know that when David Dinkins was a mayor, it took a year for people to realize all the legacy of David Dinkins. That's what New Yorkers are, people with strong opinions. And I know that it will be a few years from now when people will be able to compare and see everything that we have been able to do together with you, Speaker Melissa Margarito, Speaker Corey Johnson, moving important agenda, not only on transportation, but also on UPK, Commuter for all, and helping the homeless. So you know, as it will be probably one of the last.
Wait, why have we lost volume there? Hold on. Ydanis, I don't know if you can see, but we lost your volume.
So
there you go.
So I feel that when it comes to congestion pricing, one, we also have to figure out that we are once again seeing the challenges that come when New Yorkers are opting to use their vehicle instead of mass transportation. We know that traffic has steadily increased in the city. And it is important also that we understand that our trains are in desperate need of critical infrastructure investment. Many stations in the served community have been left behind for years, for decades. We need to invest in the communities that need it the most. It is estimated that congestion pricing will bring an estimate of $15 billion for the next 4 years. For those New Yorkers who live in Queens, who live in Brooklyn, anyone that can have any different perspective on congestion price, one thing that we should tell our brothers and sisters is that we want to be sure that the MTA, the newest structure that we put in place, go back to our community, not only to invest on how to get feedback on investing the $1.3 billion every year for the mass transportation, but also to invest in critical transportation projects that we have in our communities. So para mí es un honor estar aquí con el alcalde Bill de Blasio, con quien hemos estado trabajando junto con el speaker Corey Johnson, con la ex-speaker Viverito, moviendo agenda importante. El dinero que va a recaudar el Congestion Price de 15 billones en los próximos 4 años va a ser muy importante para nosotros hacer los trenes más asequibles, más limpios y más seguros. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. Thank you for supporting this effort with urgency, as you always do. And we're going to work together to get congestion pricing moving. Thank you very, very much. Everyone, before I turn to another couple of quick updates, we have some good breaking news here, very pertinent to the topic at hand. Senator Schumer has been providing absolutely extraordinary leadership in the Senate, moving a powerful progressive agenda. Has just said that he will put the infrastructure deal up for a vote in the Senate next week. Now, this is a strong, bold, gutsy move by Senator Schumer. This is exactly what we need to move the ball, to get the infrastructure funding rolling so that we can do more and more to bring back this city. This is tremendously helpful. Let me tell you, this is a city for so long has deserved a huge amount more federal support on infrastructure. It was not there for years and years, even decades, which has been much, much too little funding. This finally gives us the possibility of bringing in some of the funding we need to fix a whole host of things in the city for our future. But that said, we desperately need the congestion pricing effort to move now, because in terms of the MTA and providing the funding the MTA needs to keep operating and to fix its problems, congestion pricing is absolutely crucial. We need to move on that with urgency too. So all of these pieces are going to be necessary as part of the full recovery of New York City. Okay, now, that's what we need to do on the big picture, but now let me take you to right now, today. We've got another challenge from Mother Nature. In the summer, we have another heat advisory. It's beginning right now, coming up at 11 a.m. Heat advisory today and expected to go through 8 p.m. tomorrow, Friday. So I want all New Yorkers to be aware, we're now again in a state of heat advisory. The heat index today could get over 100 degrees, either today or tomorrow. That means everyone, please take precautions. Don't be outside more than you have to. Look out for your neighbors, particularly any senior citizens or folks with particular needs. Be careful with your kids, keep them hydrated. It really makes sense to be very, very cautious when we're in one of these heat advisories. We've got 300 cooling centers open across the 5 boroughs, extended hours at about 100 of those centers. We got some really good questions from the media about, are some of these locations pet friendly? We've got a good handful now of pet friendly locations. We're trying to see if we can get some more of those going. And New York City parks, public pools, of course, great refuge. Public pools will have extended hours until 8 p.m. during this heat advisory. So if you need a place to cool off, another great option is your local pool. Anyone looking for information on the cooling centers or any other way to beat the heat, go to nyc.gov/beattheheat. Okay, let's go to our indicators. And today, number 1, daily number of people admitted to New York City hospitals for suspected COVID-19. Today's report is 64 patients. Confirmed positivity of 15.71%. Hospitalization rate per 100,000 people, 0.30. Number 2, new reported cases on a 7-day average. Today's report, 409 cases. Number 3, percentage of people testing positive citywide for COVID-19. Today's report on a 7-day rolling average, 1.43%. Okay, now a few words in Spanish. I'm going to go back to congestion pricing here. Nuestra ciudad está de vuelta. Turistas están visitando, las oficinas están abriendo de nuevo y las escuelas regresan a clases en septiembre. Más y más personas están usando el transporte público, pero los trenes que administra el Estado se están cayendo a pedazos. Necesitamos precios de congestión ahora mismo para arreglar el subway. Los neoyorquinos merecen un tránsito que pueda ir al paso de nuestra ciudad. Los precios de congestión ayudarán a pagar los arreglos y lo necesitamos ya. With that, let's turn to our colleagues in the media, and please let me know the name and outlet of each journalist.
We'll now begin our Q&A. As a reminder, we're joined today by Finance Commissioner Sharif Solomon, Emergency Management Commissioner John Scrivani, Office of Labor Relations Commissioner Renee Campione, by Tom Wright, President and CEO of the Regional Plan Association, by Eric Goldstein, the New York City Environment Director of the National Resources Defense Council, by Jackie Cohen, Campaign Director for the New York Public Interest Research Group, Straphangers Campaign, by Alex Matheson, the President of the Blue Marble Project, and by Dr. Andrew Wallach, Chief Medical Officer, Ambulatory Care at Test and Trace Corps. With that, first question today will go to Derek Waller from WABC.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, good morning. How you doing?
Yes, this is Derek with WABC.
Hey,
I wanted to ask about a story everyone's talking about this week, which is crime. I know that yesterday the head of the Times Square Alliance had some pointed words for your administration, and then your spokesperson replied saying that he was being insulting to the cops who are, on the street working to get these crime numbers down. Is that kind of language helpful when obviously he has some real concerns about shootings in Times Square? How are you going to work together with community groups who obviously have a difference of opinion?
Yeah, look, we've been working together really closely with organizations in Times Square, with Tom Harris, you're talking about, constantly. I've been in contact with him. Our team's been in contact with him. Terry Monahan, a whole lot. I mean, this to me is the point. We have been constantly engaging business improvement districts, Times Square and many others, making adjustments where people raise concerns. We take them really seriously. That's why we'd like to see a little consistency. If we're working with people constantly and trying to address issues together, it's good for everyone to recognize that. Times Square, we put a huge number of officers there. Everyone sees it. And we'll keep them there as long as we need. And we will address the issues. And again, I have a lot of faith in the ability of NYPD to do that. And when NYPD says we're making a surge of officers to address a problem, I think that should be respected because it's going to work. Go ahead, Derek.
I wanted to ask about some of the issues in the Bronx, where I think shootings are up something like 73%, and you have these gang shootings with the teenagers. I wanted to know, I guess, where are these extra officers going to be this weekend? Do you know exactly? I mean, certainly the Bronx is I'd imagine where that's going to happen. And how critical is it that this person who shot this 13-year-old boy be arrested?
Oh, there's no question he's going to be arrested. Derek, look, the NYPD, I want to give them full credit here. When we see a horrible tragedy like this, when we see a young life taken who should be with us right now, NYPD finds the person involved. Literally, there's almost been no examples in recent years where they don't find the person and arrest them and bring them to justice. Because the NYPD has improved their approach year after year. They're using technology more than ever. They also have been working really hard to deepen the relationship with the community, because a lot of times it's the information from the community that is crucial. But they find the person involved every single time. They'll find this person for sure. We've got a problem in the Bronx, and the way to address that problem is the same way we've seen things turn around time and time again. This is what CompStat teaches us. This is what precision policing teaches us, and neighborhood policing. We're going to send officers where the need is greatest. We're going to work with the community and make the adjustments. You saw last month that the impact of the gang takedowns, which you're going to see more and more gang takedowns, Derek, for sure. The court's coming back, but we need them to come back more strongly. That's another thing we need the state to help us on. We need more activity in the courts, more decisions made by the courts, more movement, because it's still not what it needs to be, but at least it's coming back. We're seeing that make an impact. The gun arrests, highest in 25 years. These are all going to make an impact. So we're going to keep pounding away and get this right and turn this around.
As a programming note, we're also joined by Health Commissioner Dr. Dave Choksi. Next question goes to Marla Diamond from WCBS 880.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and everyone on the call. Just bouncing off of Derek's question about the Times Square Alliance. What do you say to the business community in Midtown about the concern that violence will keep tourists from coming back? You two seem to have different ideas about, crime in the city, and seems like the concern levels are not the same, although you say you're communicating with them. It seems that you're not on the same page on this. They see it very differently.
Hey, Marla, we see what's happening all over the city. So again, someone has an opinion, that's great. Someone wants to, stand up for their particular area or their constituency, and I understand those politics, that's great. But let's talk about what we see happening in New York City. We see businesses opening constantly. We see jobs coming back. We see outdoor dining booming. We see tourism coming back. It's all happening. It's happening because New Yorkers are fighting back, are showing resiliency and strength. It's happening because the NYPD is out there. We had 2 graduating classes lately, one over 800 officers, one over 400 officers. They're out on the streets now, helping to keep us safer. There's no question that there's a surge of activity to address any challenge that comes up. That's what the NYPD does so well, and we're going to keep doing it. And we've done it before the pandemic. We drove down crime 6 years in a row. We're going to do it again. We're coming out of one of the biggest disruption in the city's history, but we're going to fight this back and overcome it. Go ahead, Marla.
And this is the second time in recent days that you've called for speeding up the timeline for congestion pricing, but the MTA CFO, Bob Ferran, said that they are not in a position now to really be needing that revenue to keep up the capital program. So given that this is what the MTA says, the state has sort of been dragging its feet on this, how much pull does the city actually have in moving this thing along?
I'm going to offer a quick response, and I want to give an opportunity. We have some other very, very important advocates who have joined us for this. I'm going to give a couple of them a chance to weigh in here as well. I'll call on, after I answer you, I want to call on Tom Wright, who's the president of the Regional Plan Association, and Eric Goldstein, who's the New York City Environment Director for the Natural Resources Defense Council. The reason everyone is gathered here is that everyone feels tremendous urgency, Marla, that we've got to have congestion pricing. Look, the MTA, in the one hand, they cry poverty, and then the other hand, they say, oh, well, we can't move. It doesn't make any sense. They aren't putting enough trips together for the strap hangers. That's a known fact. They're saying they're struggling to hire people. Well, figure it out. You have to provide bonuses, whatever the hell it is. But congestion pricing is about sustainability. If we do not have a sustainable revenue source for MTA, we're going to keep having these problems over and over. When you looked at that horrible flooding, that was a symptom of something that's gone unaddressed for decades. I'm calling upon the state, MTA, own the problem, take the steps needed, get this revenue, help us fix this problem. So I think when the city speaks up and says, we got to do something for millions of people who use the subway every day, I think that does make a big impact. Let me turn first to Tom Wright and then Eric Goldstein just to jump in.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the opportunity to speak on this, and again, all your support for congestion pricing. The transit advocate senses that Bob Ferran's words have been, I think, misconstrued and somewhat taken out of context, and in particular, one of the things to keep in mind with regards to the MTA finances is that they look at this as both kind of the concerns they have on the operating side and the capital side. In terms of operations, obviously the dramatic decline in ridership due to COVID and restrictions has created enormous operating stress on the MTA, but thank God the federal government came to the rescue with the CARES Act, and so that we have some time to work through that. But congestion pricing specifically is intended to fund about $15 billion of the $52 billion five-year MTA capital plan that was approved just before COVID hit. That is an outstanding plan. We all have, and just as the mayor was saying, things like hardening the system against flooding, upgrading the signals and improving capacity, all that needs to be funded out of the capital plan. I think the MTA is working very hard to maintain momentum and progress on that plan, and congestion pricing is a vital component, about 30% of the funding necessary for that. So that's why this is such an urgent issue and needs to move forward. Thanks.
Very much. Thank you, Tom. And now Eric Goldstein. Eric, are you out there?
Your leadership.
There you go.
Yes.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. The idea of reducing motor vehicle traffic and air pollution in Manhattan and generating funds for the subways and buses has been around for almost 50 years. The technology has significantly improved over those decades, but the need is greater than ever. And while some people have asked if congestion pricing would be regressive, the answer is a clear no. As a study by the Community Service Society and others have been able to debunk that theory, only 2% of the city's outer borough working poor would be potentially paying a congestion fee as part of a daily commute, and 58% of the city's working poor rely on public transit. So it's very clear, both from an equity perspective and a mobility perspective, as well as an air pollution perspective, that congestion pricing is a big part of the solution. If we want to get the city fully recovered from the pandemic, make the city's economy work for everyone, we need a safe, reliable, and well-funded transit system, and congestion pricing is a necessary ingredient to make that happen. So we applaud your call for urgency, and we and a diverse group of New Yorkers are ready to stand with you to work to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
The next is Andrew Stiff from WNBC.
Andrew. Andrew?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well. How you doing, brother?
You know, I always like to leave you in suspense as to the quality of the audio because it adds a little spice to the proceedings.
I know when you come on.
And
it definitely is one of those suspense moments in each morning press conference. I admire that.
Mayor, as we speak just a few minutes from now, one of your predecessors, Giuliani, has told us that what he's going to talk about is your refusal to accept federal funding to bolster the NYPD. And I'm wondering whether that is true, that you and your office have turned down federal funding for NYPD enhancement, and what your response is to criticism from him that you're not doing enough to beef up the police response to the recent shooting spike.
Are you familiar with the phrase, liar, liar, pants on fire? That's a classic I'd like to raise right now. This guy just lies for a living, Andrew. He obviously had his law license suspended. He is a known liar. He's lying again. It's really sad. I have a lot of respect for the office of mayor of New York City, and Rudy is just not worthy of the title anymore. The fact is, we'll literally forward you a recent press release from the Biden administration identifying all the ways that we have been using federal funding to stop crime. And the Biden administration lauded our efforts to fund community-based solutions to violence. In fact, they modeled a lot of their proposals on the Cure Violence movement and the crisis management system here in New York City, and talked about all the ways we have used recent funding from the federal government to beef up responses to violence. So that's the truth. Rudy is lying. Now, I would say to you, look at the work of the men and women of the NYPD, 35,000 strong. As I said, we just added a class, over 800 in May, over 400 in June, all on the streets now. The most gun arrests since 1996. Do we need to do more? Of course. And we definitely need help from the federal government cutting off the supply of guns in New York City, and we definitely need help from the state government getting the court system to full strength, which it still is not yet. Commissioner Shea made a great point the other day. He said, Yankee Stadium's full, Citi Field's full. Why are the courts not at full strength? We need that. But in terms of what we have in this city and we're doing, we're out there fighting every single day with the resources of the NYPD. Go ahead, Andrew.
Has to do with sort of the transition to whoever becomes the next mayor. The presumption, based on the way people are talking, is that it's likely to be Eric Adams. But I wonder, does that make you a lame duck now, today? Are you looping in both Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa? How do you talk to New Yorkers about these next few months as a transition starts to begin?
First of all, I've said it many times, until the people have spoken in November, nothing's formal. We'll have a very aggressive transition process ready. Everyone knows I have a close relationship with Eric Adams, and I've talked to him a number of times, and certainly will always be ready to compare notes with him, but the fact is the formal transition will be farther down the line. But, you know, Andrew, people can say any names they want. As you see right here, right now, there's a lot of work to be done right this minute in New York City. For example, getting congestion pricing going now is urgent for millions and millions of subway riders. I'm going to do that work now, and all the other things need to be done to fight COVID, bring back jobs, bring back our schools. That's what I'm going to do till the last hour of December 31st, and then I'm going to hand off to the next mayor to continue that work.
The next is Marcia Kramer from WCBS.
Morning, Mr. Mayor. I haven't talked to you in a really long time. How you doing?
Welcome back, Marcia. How you been?
I've been okay. On a certain level, it's been a busy time because you know what's been going on in the city. But what I would like to talk to you about is the ongoing violence that's going on in the Bronx and the crime, because the Bronx, as recently as just over midnight today, there was another shooting in the 4-4 precinct. A 25-year-old was shot in the head, and the 4-4 precinct. And the Bronx and the 4-4 precinct now lead the city in gun violence and shootings. And I wonder, Mr. Mayor, because this is now such a big problem, if you've thought about going to the Bronx and talking to people, and if not, why not?
I will be spending time in the Bronx in the days ahead for sure, Marcia, and I want to, as always, hear the voices of communities and make sure we're doing everything conceivable. What we've done, though, in the meantime, of course, is moved resources to where they're needed in the Bronx, keep changing and adjusting strategies, focusing on those gun arrests, focusing on the efforts of the Cure Violence movement and the crisis management system right there in that community where work is being done right now to stop these retaliations. So I'm very focused on these issues, and I definitely will be spending time on the Bronx soon. Go ahead, Marcia.
I guess the thing is this, that you've been dealing with this spike in violence now for over a year, and it continues. And I know that some people argue that this is a national problem, but it's also a problem here in New York, which is really going to hurt our pandemic. And the question I guess people are asking is, since we have a terrific police department that has CompStat and precision policing, why have they not been able to get a handle on this? And why have all the solutions that you have proposed not worked?
Marcia, respectfully, I think a lot is changing. We went over in great detail just a week or more ago the facts, the specific facts about the month of June that showed, even though we got a lot more work to do, I said a bunch of times, Commissioner Shea said it a bunch of times, that things are starting to change. More and more guns are being taken off the streets. We're seeing a change compared to where we were a year ago. But yeah, it's been a perfect storm. It's been a horrendous situation where so much came unglued in our society because of COVID. It is happening in cities all over the country, red states, blue states alike. We got to be honest about what happened here. Our society went through a profound shock. All over this country, mayors and police chiefs are addressing it in a variety of ways. We are going to turn it around. And recovery is going to help us turn it around. And recovery is happening. There's no one who doubts recovery is happening. That is going to be a profound piece of this solution. But the NYPD is using all the tools you say, and it is working, and it will work more. There's no question in my mind.
The next is Jonah Bromwich from the New York Times.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, Jonah, how you doing?
I'm good. I wanted to ask for your reaction to a video that I think went viral yesterday, but is actually from an incident on July 6th, in which police officers targeted a man who had actually not evaded his fare, but was said to have helped someone else do so. They kind of violently confronted him, and it ended up that he was tased. Have you seen that video? And if so, what's your reaction to it?
Jonah, I'm going to look at that video a little bit later on today. I have not seen it, but I have heard it basically described to me, the whole incident, and I'm concerned. Look, first of all, I'll state the obvious. Fare evasion is not acceptable. Whether you do it yourself or you help someone else, it's not acceptable. And, you know, from what I understand of the NYPD body camera footage, the individual involved, was very aggressive and in some ways even threatening towards police. That's just not acceptable either. But that said, we're very clear in the training for our officers. The goal is to de-escalate. Clearly here we did not end up with a de-escalated situation. So this needs to be looked at carefully to see what can be done differently going forward. Go ahead, Jonah.
I think you just answered my question.
All right. Thanks very much.
The next is Sonia Rincon from 1010 Wins.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, Sonia. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Good.
With regard to congestion pricing, I've talked to residents of Yonkers who tell me they insist on driving to work in the city instead of taking the Metro North because driving into Manhattan is somehow cheaper, even including the $17 for parking. Because taking the Metro North at peak times from Westchester round trip plus a Metro card swipe on the subway in each direction, that can be expensive, close to $30 a day. If driving into the city is going to become the more expensive option for suburban commuters with congestion pricing, would you want to see the MTA make commuter trains more affordable?
Look, it's a really fair question, Sonia, and I appreciate it. And I'll make a statement. I also want to give a chance to Jackie Cohen from Strap Hangers campaign to offer thoughts as well. Sonia, I think the bottom line here is the subways are what make the entire metropolitan area work. And we got to be clear about this. This is where congestion pricing is necessary to sustain the subways. We see what bad shape they're in. That's got to be turned around. That will benefit everyone. So I understand if someone says, if you come from outside the city, I can understand why people have some hesitation about congestion pricing. But I'll tell you, if we don't do it, something much worse will happen, which is if the subways corrode, then the entire metropolitan area economy will start to corrode. That's bad for people in Yonkers. That's bad for people everywhere. In terms of how to make Metro North or any other element of the MTA affordable, I think every effort should be made, obviously, to find a way to keep those prices low for folks who need it. We very much appreciate that the MTA, even though we all are concerned whenever there might be an increase in fares, you can get, a monthly Metro card. You can get a good deal in the scheme of things. It's important that be true for folks in the suburbs as well, obviously. But what can't be lost in this discussion is how, if we don't get congestion pricing, then everything else starts to unravel. And I want to give a chance to jump here to the campaign director for the New York Public Interest Research Group's famous and historic and profoundly important Strap Hangers campaign. My pleasure to bring Jackie Cohen in.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. I think you nailed it right on the head that it's simply unsustainable to expect that people can just continue to drive in at such great numbers. We desperately need to get our transit system back on track. And the issues that plagued our buses, our subways, our commuter rail systems before COVID still exist, right? We still have a woefully inaccessible transit system. Our subways are still operating on 1930s technology. And frankly, fares on commuter rail will only continue to go up if we don't address these critical infrastructure needs. The more that the subway system, the commuter rail system disintegrates, essentially, the more expensive fares will be in the future. So we really need, we needed congestion pricing yesterday. So we're thankful to have the mayor be such a forceful champion in support of getting the ball rolling right now, because we want to prevent future major fare increases and infrastructure problems on our transit system in the future.
Thank you very, very much, Jackie. And Sonia, you go ahead now. Sonia?
Yes, thank you. Both Governor Cuomo and Borough President Adams yesterday in their appearance together said there's a climate of lawlessness in the city, as they put it, that there's a sense that anything and everything goes, and they said that is a factor in the recent spike in gun violence. Do you think that's fair?
No, I don't think that's the reality in New York City. I think the reality in New York City right now is a city that's coming back strong, economy coming back, jobs coming back. NYPD's out there doing their job every single day. So much is moving in the right direction. But what I do think is true, Sonia, is we need help from Albany. We need the court system to start moving more aggressively. We need improvements in the laws. One of the things we're pushing is a law to reform the parole system, because right now the state dumps people coming out of prison, in some cases, right into homeless shelters in New York City. Doesn't provide any support. So we definitely need help. So I would say, are there things to work on? 100%. Do we need to make sure there are clear consequences if someone does something wrong? Absolutely. And some of that comes back to state law and areas where we need to see improvements in state law for sure. But overall, the atmosphere of this city is a city that's recovering rapidly.
We have time for two more for today. The next is Henry from Bloomberg.
How are you doing, Mr. Mayor?
I'm doing well, Henry. How you feel today?
I'm doing well, thanks. I've got a question about the Gifted and Talented program. You had a panel of experts look into all the issues of diversity in the school system. And they came back and recommended that you really kind of move towards scrapping gifted and talented, that there's no way that segregating children, especially young children, kindergartners, into different tiers of accomplishment at that young age. It's not really a matter of testing, they said. It's a matter of providing education to all the students in these schools, giving all of them an opportunity for enrichment. And you didn't listen to the panel that you put together with all of these experts on the subject. And I'm wondering why, instead of tinkering with the selection process, you didn't really make the progressive move and say these programs once and for all are not progressive, and we're going to open up enrichment programs to all students who are interested in them in every school.
Thank you for the question, Henry. And Henry, I don't know, honestly, how much you were part of all the back and forth or following it over the last year or more, but it just bears making real clear to you. When that report originally came out, everyone took very seriously the fact that we had to figure out changes. We tried to figure out what would work and be equitable, and there was not immediately a solution that made sense. A lot of folks in the city do care deeply about having these kind of options for their kids. We needed to figure out a different approach. And then as we were working on that, of course, the pandemic hit, and that became the focus to address the needs of kids and families during the pandemic. That was what we thought about, not the gifted and talented. When we re-engaged the issue, we decided some very clear things. One, we were going to end gifted and talented as we knew it, because to the point you make and the point that the panel made, it was never going to be inclusive enough. And it did not fit our values and wasn't what we thought was the right way going forward. We still were searching for a solution, so we decided what we would do is have one more year with some variation of the previous system, and by this coming September, a brand new system would put in place. That new system will reach a lot more people, a lot more kids, in a very different way. And that is being perfected now and will be announcing in September. But what you're going to see is not yesterday's Gifted and Talented. That's gone. I said that last year. That's gone forever. Something very, very different is coming to replace it. Go ahead, Henry.
Okay, but when you release this latest information about gifted and talented and who was going to be selected and who's in the lottery, et cetera, there was no information demographically. You didn't take demographic information from the applicants, apparently. So there's no way to judge who is receiving these gifted and talented services, and in terms of their race and ethnic background. And so there's no way for us to really know who's been selected. And again, why not open up enrichment programs school-wide and let anyone who is interested in a foreign language or art or music or STEM to go into those classes and mingle with everybody else in the school and rise to the level that they can rise.
Yeah, Henry, directionally, I think that's exactly what you're going to see in September. I'm not going to give you the details yet, but directionally, I agree with you. We need something that reaches a lot more kids and gives them opportunity, and it may be, exactly as you say, more that if they have aptitude in a particular area, giving them that opportunity rather than this small, distinct kind of approach that's used now, something much broader and more inclusive. That's what we're working on right this minute. To your point about the information, look, I'll make sure the team today gets with you. I do think a lot of information is available, and it will show that this selection process, even though it was only one time, has ended up creating a lot more equity. And a lot more kids were reached who had not been reached previously, from communities who had not been reached previously. We'll show you those facts. But the most important point is, in September, an entirely different system, and one that's going to reach a lot more kids and I think be a lot more equitable.
Last question for today goes to Elizabeth Kim from Gothamist.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm good. I have another question about education. The city is reporting 69 classroom closures due to COVID. Can you explain the policy regulating those closures, and also give us a sense of the scale? How many total classrooms are there in the Summer Rising program? Or can you say how many of the 200,000 plus kids are being quarantined?
Okay, what I'll do, we have on the line with us Dr. Dave Choksi and Dr. Andrew Wallach, who is Chief Medical Officer for Test and Trace Health and Hospitals. So I'm going to give them both a chance to speak to this, because I have not seen the latest numbers. What we do know, Elizabeth, by the end of the school year, so the last days of June, the very extensive testing approach that we were taking was yielding almost no COVID cases in the schools. We had announced a different approach to testing for Summer Rising. It is not surprising there'll still be some positive cases. There always were some. There are always some classroom closures. But Summer Rising is occurring at about 800 sites, 800 school sites around the city. It's a huge program with around 200,000 kids in it. So if we have some classroom closures, that's not surprising to me. But in terms of how the process is working, let me see if Dr. Choksi or Dr. Wallach can speak to that.
Thank you, sir. We can speak to it briefly, and then we'll be happy to follow up with our education colleagues on some more specifics. But what I can tell you is that, just as you said, our classroom quarantine policy was a key part of our layered approach to preventing the spread of COVID-19 in schools. And we've had very low testing rates through the last few months, and that has continued through the summer as well. Looking ahead to the fall, we do think that, based on the CDC guidance and our own local review of the science underpinning it, the testing as well as isolation and quarantine when it's called for will continue to be a key part of our approach going forward.
Thank you. Dr. Wallach, you want to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to add.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
That is my follow-up question to that is, the kids where the classrooms have been closed, are they receiving remote instruction then?
Elizabeth, I'll check on that. There's a very small remote element to Summer Rising. It's a great question if that's being connected to the classroom closures. Again, from what you're saying, I'll check the numbers today. It's a small number of kids, but we clearly want to support them too. We'll get you an update to make sure that we're current with you on what's happening. But look, thank you for the question. And as we conclude today, everyone, Summer Rising, a reminder to parents out there for the next few days, and I know DOE is putting out information on this today, for the next few days, there's still an opportunity to get your child into Summer Rising. We're hearing amazing feedback, truly amazing feedback from parents about the experience their kids are having. It is 100% free. It is safe. It is full day. Culture, recreation, academics, all together. Any parent who doesn't have something good for their kid to do this summer, in the next few days, you still have a chance to sign up for Summer Rising. We want to accommodate your child. We want to give them a great summer. So take advantage of this unprecedented program and sign up now. Thank you, everybody.